Hello, friends. This message is directed more to the Adventist Church, more to Adventist people, and what they've experienced since 2020, specifically in how we've experienced the things that have happened and what we have felt, or what some of us have felt at least, with regards to these events. And I've titled this message, A Word to the Wounded Flock, God's Prescription for End Time Living. Because what needs to be openly said is that God's people, Adventist people throughout the world, have been hurt. We've been hurt by what the leadership of the church has done. In our 2020 experience, you know what I'm talking about. How many people have faced difficulties due to their stand, their desire to not receive the juice, to not be tested like lab rats, and to have their privacy not invaded by the church itself. As I had the chance to do the Sunday Law Update message, the one that basically launched this ministry and what's going, and what I'm doing, I found that there's a lot of wounded brethren. There's a lot of brothers and sisters, quite a few that came to me after I did that message. And at the churches, I did it twice, once at the local church here, another time at Hope. So once at Mission, once at Hope. And people would come up to me afterward and tell me how their family did not want to see them unless they took the juice, or they lost their job because they didn't want to take the juice. And now they have to find other employment. They were pushed out of social gatherings. Here in BC, we were told that in order to go to the church, you would have to present a document to a church official, someone in the church, standing at the door, that you had, in fact, not traveled anywhere. They would take your temperature at the door, and these other questions that they would ask you, if not only just travel, it's how are you feeling, or have you been sick? All these personal things that it's nobody's business. We would have to give this paper to get into the church. Where do you see that in the Bible? Where do you see such a thing in Scripture, that at any point a person would be so interrogated and their privacy invaded to enter into a church? So what if a person was coming off the street and wanted to know about the gospel, that God was drawing them to the church? Oh, you can't come in because you don't have the piece of paper? This is what the church here in British Columbia was doing, the Adventist church. I don't know what it was doing in other places, but I'm sure it was something similar. Australia, I know, was pretty bad. Some places in the U.S. were bad. UK, some places were bad. Different parts of the world. This is a travesty. It's a shame on our leadership that they were so craven and cowardly to act this way towards Adventist people, and not only just Adventist people, but people who maybe even have interest to come to the gospel and learn the truth. This is how people were treated. In Ezekiel 34:12-13, it says, As a shepherd seeketh out his flock in the day that he is among his sheep that are scattered, so will I seek out my sheep, and will deliver them out of all places where they have been scattered in the cloudy and dark day. And I will set up one shepherd over them, and he shall feed them, even my servant David. He shall feed them, and he shall be their shepherd. I thank God that we have Jesus as our true shepherd. Because to be quite frank, I feel that a lot of the shepherds who eat from the tithe hid. They eat from the sacred tithe and they hid. They did not stand up for the sheep. They did not stand up for the truth. Not all. Not all. There were some brave ones, for sure. For sure. And for those that did stand, praise the Lord. Praise the Lord for you. You were a wall against evil. But for the many who just rolled over and allowed the governments and church leadership to trample on God's people, shame on you. Shame on all of you. You eat from the sacred tithe. The people that lost their jobs earned the tithe that you eat from. And you ate that, and you didn't stand up for the earners of what you were eating. Shame on you. Shame on Adventist church leadership for creating documents and putting them on the internet. And those documents were used. I'm speaking about the two statements, the two vaccine statements that the AdCom put out. Those documents were used to wound and to disallow religious liberty for God's own people. I hope you're proud of what you've done. And Ted Wilson, when you had the opportunity to deal with this at the last GC session, you had a chance to hold the line, but you didn't. Some lost access to the church family. They were told to sit in the kitchen. Oh, you're not vaccinated. Some people were concerned that unvaccinated would people come to the church because the church could only have 50% capacity then. This is what the church did. This is what church leadership did. And I'm sorry, but this church leadership is not the one to lead God's people through the mark of the beast crisis, which is coming. I see very few men of courage. There are some out there, some that are speaking out. Brother Vine, he's speaking out. Some other smaller, maybe independent ministries are speaking out. Some other just church people are speaking out. But very few of those who have too much money and too much to lose are saying anything. Silent as church mice. Friends, it's a difficult time in the Adventist church. In fact, it's a difficult time in the world because the world and the church is splitting. This is, I believe, part of the shaking. The world and the church is splitting. The church is splitting along the lines of those who have been hurt and not hurt, those who would oppress and not oppress. And the only way that the church, God's people, will get through this is by turning to the one true shepherd, because many of the under-shepherds have been unfaithful in their work. Even the medical professionals, the theologians, the professors, the teachers, all of them, many of our universities. No help, no standing for the truth. We have a health message. We have a health message in which Ellen White says that we should do it without drugs. As much as possible, we should do it without drugs. And this was not obeyed. What was obeyed was fear. Suddenly people thought, this is so new, we don't know how to deal with it. Do you mean to tell me that God doesn't know how to deal with things in the future? Do you mean to tell me that God has no power to understand what's happening? God knows. God knew. God gave us the health message for a reason, as a prescription. As a prescription. It was God's prescription, the health message, to help get us through this. I want to read this particular portion. We are to recognize human government as an ordinance of divine appointment and teach obedience to it as a sacred duty within its legitimate sphere. But when it claims conflict with the claims of God, we must obey God rather than men. God's word must be recognized above all human legislation. A thus saith the Lord is not to be set aside for a thus saith the church or a thus saith the state. The crown of Christ to be lifted above all the diadems of earthly potentates. Friends, as a Seventh-day Adventist, I am not interested in rebelling against the government. I'm not interested. I'm not a rebel. I'm an obedient servant of Christ, and a servant of Christ obeys the government within its legitimate sphere. Once you want to inject me with something, once you want to test me like a lab rat, you have moved out of your legitimate sphere. And the church leadership should have stood up for this. But they did not. And there are deep wounds. There are people that are still hurting. There are people that were forced to take this shot, and they were deeply affected physically, emotionally, and mentally, and now financially. There are people like myself that refused to take the shot, the juice. I was affected financially, though by God's grace, I'm still here. We're not required to be rebels. We are required by God to submit to proper authority, even proper church authority. But when that authority is rotten, when that authority walks off its God-given mandate, it is no longer to be listened to. It is no longer to be obeyed. It is no longer to be respected. That's what the Bible says. That's what the Spirit of Prophecy says. A line has been crossed. And there are many of you out there that are wounded and that are angry, that are hurt, and you don't have a voice. Well, I'm doing this to help you have a voice, to give a message to the rest of the world church that there are people that are wounded among your ranks, that are hurt, and you've done nothing to heal. The church is financially liable for what it's done. The church is morally, ethically, spiritually liable for what it has allowed, this betrayal. And God will not allow it to go unpunished. We know the shaking is coming. We know that the church will be split among ideological lines, and those ideological lines are going to be heaven's ideology and hell's ideology. This is what's happening now. This is what's going on. The shaking is here. It's been here for a while, but it's really here now. How can we have peace when we're not allowed to say it? You know, I was told I can't speak. I can't speak from the pulpit because of what I said in my Sunday Law Update. One sermon. That was it. Yet there are people that are speaking foolishness and heresies from our pulpits and are allowed to continue on. But I can't say anything about COVID because you know why? Because it brings up the fact that the church did wrong and someone may have to be liable for it. Some of you may be angry. I'm angry. I am angry. The Bible says, be angry and sin not. And I'm trying not to sin in my anger. But it's hard. Because I see this injustice. There's injustice in the world. Injustice in the world is one thing. But injustice in the church, that stings. Injustice among the brethren, that really hurts. That's what hurts the most. So in order to deal with some of these things, what do we do? What do we do? I have to go over Psalm 37 multiple times. It's a divine prescription for end-time living. And I'm just going to go over a few things very quickly. Psalm 37 verse 1 says, fret not thyself because of evildoers, neither be thou envious against the workers of iniquity. That's evildoers inside and in the church. And there are evildoers in the church. Oh, yes. But don't fret yourself because of them. Don't get too upset. Don't remove yourself from the peace of Christ, knowing that he holds all things. And this was prophesied to come. The church will seem to be about to fall. Well, what does that mean? It means the church will seem to be about to fall into line with Babylon and Babylonian thinking and the coercion of conscience that Babylon does and the oppressive measures that Babylon does. That's what it means. And the church is heading in that direction. The church leadership, in any way. The corporate Adventism is falling in line with what's going on in the world. It's aligning its mind with what's going on in the world. And if it doesn't change, God will remove it. Corporate Adventism is not the church. You and I are the church. We are the church. And God is our shepherd. And he tells us, don't fret. He has it well in hand, friends. But having it well in hand doesn't excuse those that have done the evil. They need to be brought. They need to be brought to account. I don't have the power to do that. And maybe a lot of you don't. But we can pray to God, and God does. God has the power to bring these people to account. And maybe he will on this earth, and maybe not. But I believe, friend, that we're going to see Jesus Christ come very soon. He's going to bring all things unto account. Verse 2, for they shall soon be cut down like grass, and wither as the green herb. As bad as injustice is, remember that it is not forever. Those that do injustice, those that are wicked, will be gone, and so will the wickedness that they do and the injustice that they do. Trust in the Lord and do good. So shalt thou dwell in the land, and verily thou shalt be fed. I experienced this. I trusted in God. I stood for a biblically enlightened conscience. I looked at the Bible, I looked at the spirit of prophecy, and said, God doesn't want me to do this. I don't want any part of this. Not only just the juice itself, but the system behind the juice, the coercion. No, I wasn't going to be part of it. I trusted in the Lord. I did the good that I believe the Lord wanted me to do, and he has fed me. Haven't lost any weight yet. He has fed me. Delight thyself also in the Lord. He shall give you the desires of thine heart. We can delight ourselves in a God that is magnificent and wonderful, even in the midst of terrible things. And he's given me the desire of my heart. The desire of my heart was to start a ministry of my own. The desire of my heart was to grow something, was to be useful for something beyond my job. And now that I've left that, yes, I feel useful for something. I feel that God is fulfilling the desire of my heart. And just the last few verses here. Commit thy way to the Lord, and trust also in him, and he shall bring it to pass. And this is what's happened. Committed my way to God, as you commit your way to God. And as we trust in him, he'll bring righteousness to pass. He'll bring it to pass. He'll bring salvation to pass. He'll bring true justice to pass. It may not happen amongst men, and I don't think it will. It may not happen amongst men. It may only happen because God himself does it. But let me tell you and warn you that when God does it, it's too late for you. Now is the time to repent and turn around and commit our way to the Lord. And he shall bring forth thy righteousness as the light, and thy judgment as the noonday. This is especially potent promise because it says that our righteousness and our judgment, he'll bring it to light. He'll show that you were right. You are right to refuse this. You're right to stand for conscience sake. You're right to stand for Christ's sake. You were right to do this. And one day it'll be shown that you were right to do this. In fact, it's being shown more and more. There's more and more articles showing that these things are a poison. And yet the vaccine statements remain on our website, on the Seventh-day Adventist official website. The vaccine statements remain, yet more and more evidence is piling up that these things are poison. Now rest in the Lord and wait patiently for him. This can be a tough one, to wait. Wait for God to act. Don't act yourself. Always in prayer, wait for God to act. And when he tells you to act, act. Fret not thyself because of him who prospers in his way, because of the man who bringeth wicked devices to pass. Wicked devices have been brought to pass within and without the church. And people are prospering. Some people are still very wealthy. I don't know if any pastors lost their job. They're eating from the tithe that people who lost their job were earning, but it doesn't matter to them. The church is flush with money. So what does it matter? As long as those coins keep rattling in. What does it matter that a few must needs be sacrificed so that the church can continue? Finally, cease from anger. If you start angry, cease from anger, forsake wrath. Fret not thyself in any wise to do evil. There is righteous anger, righteous indignation. And in the end, we leave it in God's hands. It's tough. It's been a difficult process for me. Not only what happened to me, but what I've seen happen to others. It's terrible. Terrible. Cruel. Cold-hearted. Vicious. Yeah. It's the word to the wounded flock. Fret not, trust, delight, commit, rest, and cease. A divine prescription for living at the end of time. I believe Psalm 37 is a psalm from before probation. Psalm 91 is after probation. For 1,000 shall fall at thy side, and 10,000 at thy right hand, but it shall not come nigh thee. Psalm 91, that's for after probation. But I believe Psalm 37 is from before, because we see these wicked rising, and we're going to see wicked rising even more. It's going to rise even more in the church and outside the church. And it's going to be a trial for those of us to be faithful. I'll never not be a Seventh-day Adventist. Whether my membership is taken away, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. It's words on a piece of paper. What matters is the words on God's books. So if you're being threatened with removal of your membership, if they cast you out of the synagogue, just praise the Lord. And the way through this, the way to win this game is not to play it. Jesus said, let the blind alone. Leave them alone. The blind lead the blind. They'll both fall into the ditch. Leave them alone. Go forward. That's what I've been trying to do. Go forward. Ignore what roadblocks they put on you. Ignore what they say about you and just move forward. You have a ministry. Every one of you has a ministry. Those of you that have been hurt, betrayed, you have a ministry. You know what it feels like. And it's a precious experience, this pain, because it'll give us strength to help others who are going to be betrayed by their own families, who are already betrayed by their own families, by their co-workers, by their friends, by their relatives, by the world, by the institutions that they're part of. There's people in other churches that have been treated the same way. And God is gathering together a people that are going to press together. They're going to press to Christ, press together. You're not alone. You're not alone. You may feel alone, but you're not alone. The Lord is with you. And there are other people around you that are with you. And, you people can contact me on my website, prophetfromprophets.com. It'll be in the description at the bottom of this video. And you can contact me. And people have contacted me. They have talked to me and shared what they've gone through. And I want to say the Lord is willing and here to listen to you. And he is bringing a people together. The church will seem to be about to fall, but it will not. The sinners in Zion will be shaken out. And it's up to us to not end up either proud, boastful, arrogant, or oppressive, conniving, and greedy of filthy lucre. We have to avoid both ditches, friends. If you have taken the juice and you regret it, ask the Lord for help. If you were an oppressor and you regret it, now's the time to turn. God has allowed this to happen so that God's people can wake up. So I could wake up and see what was going on. I was sleepy. I think a lot of us were sleepy, but God has allowed this to wake us up. And so as tough as it's been, as difficult as it is, I pray for all you, my brethren. I pray for all you, the little flock that was hurt. Wherever you are, be faithful. Remain faithful. God will be with you. He will bless you. When the religion of Christ is most held in contempt, when his law is most despised, then should our zeal be the warmest and our courage, firmness, the most unflinching. Testimonies 5, page 136 says, when the religion of Christ is most held in contempt, when his law is most despised, then should our zeal be the warmest and our courage and firmness the most unflinching. This is the time to stand in defense of truth and righteousness when the majority forsake us. How many? The majority. The majority, she says. when the majority forsake us. To fight the battles of the Lord when the champions are few. This will be our test. This is a test. This is a pre-test. At this time, we must gather warmth from the coldness of others, courage from their cowardice, and there have been cowards, and loyalty from their treason, and there have been traitors. This is not a time to hold anything back. This is the time to be all in for Christ. All in for the truth, no matter what happens. There's no reserve of religious liberty. That's ridiculous. Like they said in their second document, it was said that, or implicated that, if the church stood up for this, then people wouldn't take them seriously, or there wouldn't be enough to stand up when the mark of the beast comes. That's ridiculous. The test we just experienced was given to us by God's mercy, friends. It's a pre-test. It takes our spiritual temperature. It helps us to gauge where we are with Jesus. Friends, some of our people have failed. Some of our leadership has failed when it comes to this test. And part of it, I think, when I consider it, is for God wants us to stop looking to people. Stop looking to heroes of the faith, so to speak, but look to Christ. Look to Christ. Christ is the head of the flock. Christ is your shepherd. Christ is the one who's going to lead you. Yes, sometimes he may give some authority to men, and we need to obey that. Absolutely. I'm not talking about, total splintering. Christ gives us leaders. He raises up people to speak the truth, like the prophets of old. Christ wants us to be united, that they all may be one. But it's going to be a unity on truth and the word. It's not going to be a unity on lies and deception and coercion. That's a satanic unity, and we have nothing to do with it. Nothing. We have everything to do with God's unity and God's power and God's strength, not by might, not by power, but by my Spirit, says the Lord. God's Holy Spirit is bringing his true people together. His angels are gathering people together from all over the world. And how is that happening? Through a common mind, a common way of seeing the world, a common vision of the truth. As we study the Bible and the spirit of prophecy, as we see things happening in the world, we become united in that. Even though we are miles apart, we all end up working in unison because we listen to the Holy Spirit. This is what God wants. That type of unity goes beyond any type of earthly organization. It's a unity of the mind and the spirit and the heart based on the Word of God and the spirit of prophecy. That is the unity that God is developing. That is the unity that will take us through to the end. Stop looking to institutions. Stop thinking that you can't go to heaven if the men down here bar you from it. They have no power to close heaven to you or close the truth or righteousness. There's going to come a time, friends, when we may have to stand individually before courts, before men, before massive gatherings. We're going to have to stand on our own. And we have to now develop that faith to stand on our own and not be, I'm not talking about splitting off. I'm a Seventh-day Adventist. I will always be a Seventh-day Adventist. Whether I'm in a conference or not is irrelevant. The fact is, I'm always going to be a Seventh-day Adventist. I'm always going to hold to these truths. Whether in a conference or out of conference, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. We follow Christ. We follow the truth. But rather seek ye the kingdom of God, and all these things will be added unto you. Fear not, little flock, it is your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. As the song says, the world behind me, the cross before me. No turning back, no turning back. To the wounded flock, wherever you are, whoever you are, fear not. It's your Father's good pleasure to give you the kingdom. Christ is with us. Pray for our brethren. Pray for ourselves. And talk to each other. Find each other. Commune with each other. If you have a small group, small groups are forming. Small groups are forming. People are forming. God is forming his people from within. God is going to purify this church. He is going to have a faithful pastorate. He is going to sweep through the church like a mighty wind. He is going to do a work that we didn't think he would do. Ellen White says he's going to work in a manner that we didn't expect. Maybe this is part of it. I don't know. I'm just a man, a voice crying in the wilderness. I'm not claiming I'm a prophet, but I do read the prophets and what the prophets have said. And I think things are happening, brethren. And we all need to get ready. May the Lord be with you and help you. God bless you, take care of you, and shelter you in a time of evil. In Jesus' name, amen.